Chapter 1. SSV Jalut raced towards New Rannoch with a Reaper hot on their heels. The Reaper was basically a giant metal octopus in space. Well, as long as you ignored the giant laser shooting eye. Every 50,000 years, thousands of Reapers appeared from the void between galaxies, wiped out all the advanced civilizations, and then left the Milky Way again. At least, that was what Commander Shepard of the SSV Normandy had claimed. But New Rannoch was home to an ancient time capsule that proved Shepard's theory. That was the good news. The bad news was that the Reaper invasion was happening right now, hence the Reaper chasing the ship. As the everybody ran towards their post, Aaron and Olaf McKinley decided that the report for Admiral Hackett would have to wait. They were 12-year-old twins. How they had ended up on Jalut was a whole other story that didn't matter right now. The question they had to deal with was, where could they go and not be in the way? It was Olaf who decided the answer. He put the lids on the jars of ink they had been using for their report. Then he took his sister's hand and led the way to sickbay. Dr. Telos was already getting it ready for casualties. "Can we help?" Olaf asked. The Asari doctor nodded and started giving them instructions. Captain Zara Ayers, Lieutenant Commander Thomas Rodriguez, and Staff Lieutenant John Harris had just gotten the biggest promotion of their careers. 5 minutes ago, they had only been responsible for the people aboard the Jalut. Now they were the tip of the spear that was defending 22 million people. They were in CIC, studying the tactical situation. "Only one Reaper so far," Harris said. "Emphasis on the so far, Skipper." "Yeah, it's a safe bet there are more on the way," Zara said. "You think they know about one of the Prothean time capsules being intact?" Rodriguez asked. "It doesn't matter. They can't risk us finding any information that might reveal a weakness in their defenses," Zara said. "I presume we're not getting any backup," Harris said. "Nope. We never reached clear space to call the cavalry," Zara said. As she studied the tactical displays, she wondered how things could get any worse. "Omega. Vengeance." Captain Kaimas watched as the Reaper destroy the MSV Frankenstein and decided that this whole mission was big pile of Krogan droppings. It had begun so simple. Follow the Alliance ship to whoever had stolen a piece of Omega. Wait for the Alliance ship to leave. Kill whoever stole the piece of Omega and go home, but things had quickly begun to unravel. First, they had lost contact with Omega. The last distorted message they had gotten had been useless. They had only been able to make out something vague about adjutants. Next, it turned out that they lacked the firepower to execute the mission. Omega Vengeance was the flagship of a fleet of 7 pirate ships, but what they thought was a bulk freighter fitted with a cutting beam was actually a dreadnought. Somebody at the sensor monitoring station would have some explaining to do if he ever made it back to Omega. For now, however, there was the small issue of a Reaper invasion to deal with. Kaimas was standing on the bridge, trying to decide his next move. "Orders, Captain." His first officers, a Salarian called Iram, asked. Vengeance's crew was a mix of species. Kaimas was Batarian. "To hell with the original mission. Follow that frigate." He turned to communications. "And open a channel. Tell them we're working for the Systems Alliance now." "Arya will kill you when she finds out," Iram said. "If we get her fleet back in one piece, she will be too stunned to kill us." "Because we'll have pulled off a miracle," Kaimas only nodded in reply. But as the fleet followed the Reaper that was chasing the Jalut, he thought that even one person surviving this would be a miracle. The Reaper called itself Avenger. It was one of 5 called in by Tiger, the Reaper that had destroyed the MSV Frankenstein. Tiger was supposed to do a quick check of this system. Then the 6 of them would crush the tiny space station of Omega before heading deeper into the Terminus systems. But then, Tiger had encountered the vessel that had burned one of the collector cruisers at Uluru, not to mention that he was now being chased by a fleet of puny beings from Omega. So Tiger had called in the others. They would follow the Omega fleet in and crush them. Amel, Valkyrie. Completing the odd chase was the AML Valkyrie. Considered woefully outdated by Asari standards, the Asari merchant liner hadn't carried passengers for 70 years. Instead, she belonged to Tyla Farka. Farka was a reporter for Thesha News Service. She had been in Afterlife at the right moment and had overheard the conversation between Arya and Captain Ayers. It had taken her weeks to infiltrate the staff of Omega's biggest nightclub, but she had pulled it off. Arya was too paranoid for standard-issue listening devices. So Tyla had needed to get creative. The solution had been very simple. She had hidden an old-fashioned tape recorder in Arya's couch. Said recorder was hardwired to a microphone so that there wouldn't be any signals for scans to detect. But the smart part was that the on-off switch was connected to a pressure pad. When Arya wanted to intimidate someone, she always sat down on a specific spot on the couch, and that was where the recorder was. So when Arya sat down, she turned on the recorder herself. Getting the tape had been the hardest part of the plan, but she had figured out when to do that as well. The whole scheme had been risky as hell, but it had yielded her several stories already. Unfortunately, Arya was beginning to take notice. So Farka had decided that trialing Ayers' ship would be a good way to kill two birds with one stone, get a story and get out of Arya's reach. Omega Vengeance and her fleet had complicated things, but she was still here. Ain Jalut being chased by one Reaper, which is chased by Arya's fleet, who are chased by 5 more Reapers, and those are chased by me. Why didn't I become a dentist like my parents wanted? Figuring it was too late to turn back now anyway, she contacted the nearest full depot on an emergency frequency and pressed the record button. Retransmit the following on all channels. Level 1 emergency, SSV Ain Jalut under attack at coordinates. The computer inserted the coordinates. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. Send reinforcements. Loop message until acknowledged. She cut the channel, then she engaged the engines and joined the chase. Chapter 2. In the shell, Rick McKinley was pushing the engines to their limit. Because of safety protocols, the FTL drive wouldn't engage inside the gas cloud, which meant they were stuck running at sublight speeds. Claudia, this is not going to end well unless we get more speed. He yelled into the intercom. The system won't let me, Rick, Sanders countered. We're as close to FTL as we can get. We're going 3 times as fast as last time. Rick grumbled. The first time through the shell had been a careful exploration, not a battle. So they had been moving at 30% light speed. Now they were clipping at 90%, but the Reaper was still closing. In sick, Harris was thinking out loud. Why isn't it shooting at us? The laser beam would travel at light speed, and since they were only 90% of the way there, Ain Jalut wouldn't be able to dodge it. That would ignite the gas, Rodriguez said. Not even a Reaper could, oh no. What? Harris asked before seeing the grin of Zara's face. Oh no. No, we can't ignite gas ourselves. We'd be crushed by the blast. But Zara was already studying the chemical analysis they had made on their first time through. To the naked eye, the whole outer shell looked identical. To chemical sensors, it was a collection of pockets of various gases. There, that methane pocket, she stabbed at the screen. That's our move. And how exactly are we going to do that? Rodriguez asked. Zara's grin grew wider as she began explaining her plan. There was not a lot of time to implement the plan, but everybody knew what to do. Ain Jalut's reaction control system used gas. After some consideration, the Alliance had gone with oxygen. Yes, there were risks, but they were risks humanity had known about for centuries. And because the gas could be stored in liquid form, it was easy to bring large amounts of it. Sanders and Zhukov were hard at work unscrewing several cylinders from the system. Won't this leave us without fuel for the RCS? Zhukov asked. Nope, Sanders said. We're only taking 8 of the 10 cylinders. And Dr. Telos had an idea. They were in engineering. The cylinders were in a special, heavily shielded compartment in the floor. Said compartment was connected to an oxygen plant in the floor of the mess hall. That plant fed the compartment and the supply of medical oxygen in sickbay. What made the system super smart was that both locations used the same model of tank. In an emergency, one of the RCS fuel tanks could be taken to sickbay. There, it could be plugged into a rig that converted it into breathable oxygen, but Telos knew it also worked in reverse. The door opened and Telos entered with Aaron and Olaf McKinley in tow. Between them, they carried 4 tanks. Are we really going to try to blow up a Reaper? Olaf asked. Yep. Zhukov said. Okay. Sanders and Zhukov finished removing the cylinders, loading them onto a cart. As they left, Barnaby and several others were hard at work installing the tanks brought down from sickbay. They arrived at the airlock behind the bridge with 1 minute left on the clock. Approaching target, Rick McKinley said, attaching our little surprise now. Zhukov took a C4 charge from his pocket, set the timer, and attached it to one of the tanks. Then he and Sanders pushed the cart into the airlock. Ready? Sanders yelled. McKinley pushed the right button. Tiger watched as the human vessel ejected something from one of its airlocks. The Reaper ignored the item, merely making a mental note to destroy it later. So the tanks were allowed to break their seals and beginning spitting their contents into the pocket of methane. The liquid oxygen turned to gas. The gases mixed and the timer on the C4 kept ticking. Because it was in the lead, Jalut cleared the pocket. Tiger was not so lucky. It was still 2 minutes away from exiting when the timer hit. 0, leading to instant results. The C4 exploded, sparking the oxygen and the whole pocket. A massive ball of pressure expanded through the gas cloud. McKinley knew what was coming, so he dove the ship under the plane she had been traveling on. Even with only 2 cylinders of fuel, the RCS pulled of the move with ease. The Reaper was not so lucky, taking the full blast. 2 of its tentacles were sheared right off, but it was not enough to kill the giant creature. Omega. Vengeance. Kaimas watched as the Reaper was hit. It was damaged and disoriented, but still alive. He turned to Aram. Fire all the nukes. Now, each of the pirate ships had 4 nuclear fission warheads in storage. Kaimas had ordered them loaded just in case they got the chance to use them. And now the Alliance ship had provided it. Nukes away, all 28 missiles hit the part of the Reaper that had already been damaged, but it wasn't enough. Crap, Iram said. Orders? Scatter, don't give it, and then something unexpected happened. The explosion was fading, creating an area of low pressure where the pocket had been. So now all the surrounding gas was rushing into that zone. The gas interacted, creating new chemical elements. Elements that didn't like the heat that was coming from the Reaper's wounds one bit. And burned. Spontaneous Reaper combustion? Iram said. Who cares as long as it's dead? Good point. Kaimas ordered the fleet to regroup. They had a warship to find.